Hey, what's up, guys? This is Adam from Rescue Michigan, and in this video, we're going to be talking about Unlock Michigan Part 2. If Part 1 has succeeded, at last, the legislature has repealed the Emergency Powers of Governor Act, preventing Gretchen Whitmer from imposing lockdown orders on Michigan. However, she is still effectively able to do so through the health department, and Unlock Michigan Part 2 aims to take that away from her. So, is this something to get involved with? Yes. Is this everything we hoped it would be? You be the judge. We're going to look at the text of the proposal, which has been submitted to the Board of State Canvassers. They have not yet received the official 100-word summary that they will need to go out and collect petitions, but that is happening soon, and the time now is to get ready for this. Now, if you're familiar with Rescue Michigan on our website, we've been encouraging this from the get-go. We didn't know whether Unlock Michigan was going to follow through and start a Part 2 to take away the power of the health inspectors to effectively control people's lives through emergency orders. But they have, and they have submitted the language to the Board of State Canvassers, so that is happening soon. Let's talk first about the basics of this. And also, by the way, I know everybody is curious about what the status is of an election integrity citizen-initiated law. I will just say that we are concerned that the entity that was planning to do that is suddenly radio silent. But there was, however, a recent news article in which Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey says it is coming. So we still are holding out hope, but we are a little bit concerned. This was supposed to have been launched by now, and it hasn't happened yet. So something is going on. We will be following up with that, hopefully pretty soon, hopefully with good news. But in the meantime, I guess we'll have to sit tight. Unfortunately, it's not just something that any grassroots organization can do to set out to collect 500,000 signatures. If we thought we had the financial resources to do it, we would. And unfortunately, there's been some misinformation about how easy it is to collect 500,000 signatures. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But first, I just want to make this important point about getting involved in this project. Absolutely, we support this effort, even though we do have some issues with the language, and we'll look at that in a moment. But here's the important thing. This is not just good policy. It is what we would call an opportunity battle. And by that, we mean it is an effort that you're not just expending your resources, you can use it as a way to build your resources. And in particular, we've been talking since the get-go about the importance of building local political organizations at the most local level. And that means your city, your township, even your precinct. And going out and knocking on doors, collecting petitions for preventing the governor and the government and perhaps your local government from being able to destroy our lives is certainly a great thing to do. It's a way to get out there, to meet your neighbors, and to actually get to know some people. And we're going to be doing a lot of videos in the coming week about how to do that. But that's the most important thing. You can have a petition, which is the official petition where you will be submitting those signatures to Unlock Michigan, who will transmit them when they're all done to the Secretary of State. But beyond that, depending on how you do it, you can use those interactions to grow a local organization. One thing you could do is you could stand at a street corner or at a shopping mall and collect signatures. But the problem with doing it that way is that you'll get people from all over the place. Maybe they'll be in your city. Maybe some of them won't be, depending. Whereas knocking on doors, you'll be identifying particular neighbors right in your own neighborhood that you can follow up with. If they're willing to sign a petition to prevent the governor via the health department from locking down our state, you've identified someone who is a probable ally in our effort. And that's extraordinary. So absolutely, we would encourage you, get involved in the effort, volunteer to be a county coordinator, and then they'll be connecting activists to you. That's absolutely worth doing. So do get involved, go to Unlock Michigan and sign up and get ready because it's going to be a great project. It's absolutely effective. Going out and knocking on doors is one of the best things that you can possibly do. So it will be fantastic. Now, let's take a look at what the actual language of the Unlock Part 2 is going to do, because we always want to look at the details. They are absolutely critical in politics. It's not just, this is going to make everything better. No, let's see what the actual policy is. And maybe we can make some recommendations for improvement, although at this point the ship has probably sailed. But let's look at it here. This is the actual text of the petition language, where what you see in bold is what Unlock Michigan would add to the public health code. And that's what we're looking at here, Michigan compiled laws, section 333, or rather chapter, is it chapter? Whatever, it's MCL 333.2253, which is the state health inspector's ability to lock down the public, and then also 2453, which is the analog at the local level. So as you can see, they're not actually deleting any language, they are adding language. So first of all, where this is all, what's not in bold is the existing law. So what it says here is that if the director of MDHHS determines in writing they are adding, which is good, make them put it in writing what their reasons are, that control of an epidemic is necessary to protect the public health, the director may by emergency order prohibit the gathering of people for any purpose and may establish procedures to be followed during the epidemic to ensure continuation of essential health services and enforcement of health laws. Emergency procedures shall not be limited to this code. That is the existing law. What they would add is the next paragraph. The authority of the director to issue, revise, replace, and enforce an emergency order. Oops, there's a typo there. An emergency order related to an epidemic under this section shall continue for a period of up to 28 days after the director's written determination that control of that epidemic is necessary to protect the public health. After this 28-day period, any emergency order under this section related to that epidemic is automatically rescinded and unenforceable, and any new emergency order under this section related to that epidemic shall not be issued unless a request by the director for an extension of the time to issue, revise, replace, and enforce an emergency order related to that epidemic for a specific number of days is approved by resolution of both houses of the legislature. So what they're saying is the public health director can impose lockdowns, but for no more than 28 days unless approved by the legislature for an extension for any particular epidemic. Now, you may already think there might be a loophole there, because what exactly constitutes an epidemic? And this is a public health question we are facing right now, because of course the original lockdowns beginning last year were done for the outbreak of the Chinese coronavirus, whereas now we are hearing there is a Delta variant, and it is newer and scarier, and your vaccination might be no good. We might now need to vaccinate or to mask even people that are vaccinated. So the question is going to become, what exactly constitutes a singular episode of an epidemic? And unfortunately, in this provision, it's not entirely clear. And that's something that probably should be done better, because this is a question that may be decided favorably in litigation, but if the governor goes out, or excuse me, not the governor, just her subordinate, the director of MDHHS, comes out and says, this is a new epidemic, and therefore we're allowed to issue brand new lockdown orders without legislative approval, it will be up to the court to decide whether or not this is one epidemic, multiple epidemics, and this is an issue we're dealing with right now. It's summertime, so the epidemic is at its lowest, but it's going to come back in some degree in the fall. And can that be considered a new outbreak? Could that be considered a new epidemic? This is a question that probably should not be left to the courts. Should probably clearly explain what exactly constitutes a singular episode of an epidemic. And unfortunately, it's just not in here. The other thing I would point out is a resolution approved by both houses of the legislature. That would be called a concurrent resolution, a resolution approved by the House and the Senate. Resolutions in the House, concurrent resolutions, are not subject to a voice vote, or to a roll call vote, rather. They are subject to voice vote. And what voice vote means, essentially, in the legislature, is that it is entirely up to leadership. It is up to leadership. There is not a recorded roll call vote. So if there is some controversy about, say, extending a lockdown, it is up to leadership. And God forbid Democrats have control of both houses of the legislature. They would be allowed to extend an emergency order indefinitely, or whatever the department asks for, assuming, and maybe we shouldn't, but let's say we have Democrats in the House, the Senate, and the governor's mansion. It means they can extend the emergencies and they would not even be subject to a roll call vote. And again, this is absolutely precedent in the House and the Senate. They do not have a recorded vote. So members of the caucuses can say, I didn't support that extension, but there's no recorded vote. A voice vote is essentially always the opinion of the speaker or the speaker's, the assigned speaker, the speaker pro tem, etc. Majority leader pro tem in the Senate. So if they do extend lockdown orders, it's all on leadership. And there's not a recorded vote of lawmakers. So that's in there. That is potentially a problem. It could certainly be a problem if Democrats take control in 2022, God forbid. Now we also have Section 2483. And this is essentially the same thing, except it applies to local health departments. A local health officer can do yada, yada, yada. And again, the existing law gives them basically carte blanche to do anything. And this would require that they get approval after 28 days, but not from the state legislature, from the local governing entity, which would typically be your county commission. So if you're in a liberal county, Wayne, Washtenaw, you're still screwed. The local department can still lock you down. And the county commission could and most likely would condone that, even for more than 28 days. Now, again, these things might still be subject to litigation, but why is this even left open? And by the way, why in the world do they not just repeal this entire section right here? If there's an epidemic that's so severe that they need to severely constrain your fundamental God-given rights as an American citizen, why should that be subject to the decision of a local health department? If there's an outbreak in one county, which of course would logically be in the entire state, why should counties be allowed to destroy the civil liberties of their citizens at all? Why would not? I mean, MDHHS already has the ability to issue anything under current law, and under this revision, it would be subject to legislative approval after 4 weeks. But why not just repeal this whole thing entirely? Because here's what could happen. A local health department could extend a lockdown. The county commission could approve it. And that would be that. That would be it for your county. So, is this everything we would want? No. Is this still worth doing? I would still say yes. This is still a big improvement over what things are currently. And more importantly, as I say, this is something that is an opportunity battle for you to go out and to meet like-minded people who would sign a petition to restrict the ability of the state government to impose lockdowns. So it is still an opportunity. Could be better. Should have been better. Is it still worth doing? Yes, it is. So we would encourage everybody, do get involved in Unlock Michigan for this project, because it will ultimately be worthwhile, even if it's not everything that we hope for. Now, I also want to point out something else about this. And this is something that I've seen Unlock Michigan and Stand Up Michigan doing, which is putting out a posture that this is entirely what the grassroots are doing. And again, as the grassroots, you should get involved in this, because this is your opportunity to grow your personal political connections in your community. And that is worth doing. That's something that, and again, by all means, become a county coordinator. You can connect with the other activists in your county, because they'll start referring them to you. And this is absolutely 100% worthwhile. But there is something that's been going around, and that is the notion that this is all entirely done by the grassroots. And I hate to break it to you folks, but this is the Ballotpedia summary of Unlock Michigan, the Unlock Michigan 1 project, and Unlock Michigan raised and spent just under $3 million to pass Unlock Part 1. It was not only done with the grassroots. And the reason why I bring this up is because people are now asking us, why don't we go out? Where is our citizen-initiated law on election integrity? And the answer is, we have raised some support from you folks, and we are grateful for that, and we can spend that in a targeted manner effectively, but we are not anywhere near the kind of money it would take to do a statewide ballot proposal, which does require professional organization and, yes, even paying canvassers. So where'd this money come from for Unlock Michigan? Well, most of it came from something called Michigan Citizens for Fiscal Responsibility. Who's that? We have no idea. Now, I would guess probably entities like the Restaurant Association, maybe the Small Business Association of Michigan. You see Associated Builders and Contractors chipped in. Americans for Prosperity chipped in an in-kind contribution. Michigan, My Michigan, I believe that is Senator Mike Shirkey's organization. Ron Weiser himself contributed $100,000. These efforts do take real resources. And fortunately, Unlock Michigan is a serious organization that does have the ability to raise the kind of money to do the things that are effective. So where is our citizen-initiated law? We've been given certain assurances that an organization has been started and will be funded for election integrity. If that does not materialize, we'll be happy to name who made those assurances. But in the meantime, we're still holding out hope that there will be a citizen-initiated election reform. Certainly from what we've seen, the Democrats are afraid of that. And certainly it is worthwhile doing, again, because it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to go out, to connect to your neighbors, to meet people, to grow an organization and build the grassroots in Michigan that we will need to be successful in 2022. So absolutely, we encourage people to get involved in this. Again, we wish the language was better, but the language still, it is not bad. It is still going to be powerful. It's still certainly powerful to a court to see that the people of Michigan have enacted a law that prohibits the state and even local health departments from extending an emergency beyond a 28-day basis. So still worth doing. Is it everything we wanted? No, but if you want to do something better, you better have $2 or $3 million kicking around, because there just is not another way to do that. And unfortunately, I've gotten emails from organizations that are repeating the statement that this was all done by the grassroots, all by themselves. And the result of this, unfortunately, is that people have an inflated expectation of what the grassroots is able to achieve all by itself. And one of the things that this is manifested in is multiple efforts to repeal Gretchen, or to recall Gretchen Whitmer, Dana Nessel, Jocelyn Benson. These are all projects that require even more signatures, far more signatures than Unlock Michigan had to achieve, and in a much shorter time frame. They are not realistic, not in the slightest. However, there is an interesting story that came out today, and this is worth taking a look at, because it raises a lot of serious questions about what the agenda really is. So this is, let me move this into frame here. This came out in Bridge Magazine. They are a left-wing publication, but they are reporting, this is quoting from GOP strategists, efforts to recall Michigan Governor Whitmer have backfired, and they explain how. Here's Gretchen Whitmer, looking kind of stoned, actually, and they explain here that this has enabled Whitmer to shatter fundraising records. And when you first read that paragraph, I thought, oh, they're just talking about she's playing up for sympathy. But no, that is not what is actually going on. Here's what's happened. Candidates facing recall in Michigan do not have to follow the state's individual campaign finance contribution cap of $7,100, according to a ridiculous 1984 ruling by longtime Democrat Secretary of State Richard Austin. Austin claimed that if you're subject to recall, then the individual contribution limit no longer exists. And so Gretchen Whitmer has been given, from Mark Bernstein, one of the attorneys on TV, you see, the Bernsteins, gave her $257,000, and Illinois Governor Pritzker gave her $250,000. Now, that is absolutely insane that is the law of the land, that if you're subject to a recall, even if the organization has no ability to collect the signatures in time to have an actual recall effort, that you're suddenly no longer subject to campaign finance limits. It makes you wonder, what would happen if this was taken to its logical extension? Let's say Republicans decide to play that same game. And so they have fined people to file recall petitions against each of them. And now suddenly they're not subject to the campaign finance limits. Well, the extension of that is suddenly you see how this all works, because this only applies to incumbents, does not apply to candidates challenging the incumbents. This is an incumbent protection scheme devised by a ruling of the Secretary of State in 1984. This is, I hope, going to be subject to some litigation. Unfortunately, that's not my bailiwick. But if I was running for office, if I was running for governor, if I was running for state rep, state senate, any seat where you're challenging an incumbent, that you might bring this, especially if the incumbent is actually taking advantage of this. So if you are any of the Republican candidates for governor, this is an extraordinarily absurd decision that says Gretchen Whitmer can raise infinite money from individuals and you can't. Even when, and this is an additional point, is in circumstances where there's absolutely no chance that these recalls are successful. Take a look at, let's take a look at this. This is the agenda of the Board of State Canvassers meeting that happened yesterday. Consideration of the sufficiency of initiative petitions for Fair and Equal Michigan. That's the group that wants to be able to sue everybody over transgender rights. So that's probably coming. And then look at this. Consideration of 5 pairs of petitions to recall Whitmer, 3 pairs of petitions to recall the lieutenant governor, 4 pairs of petitions to recall Jocelyn Benson, 4 pairs of petitions to recall Dana Nessel, all submitted by the same guy, some nobody. So is David Blair a Democrat operative doing this to enable all of the Democrats to raise unlimited money? Or is David Blair just some putz who has no idea that none of these things are remotely realistic, unless he's going to put in $10, $15 million to recall all these individuals? Either way, the result is the same. So that's what's going on, folks. So hopefully, I would think any candidate for governor that wants to be taken seriously is going to sue over this issue. It is absolutely outrageous that incumbent Democrats are allowed to raise unlimited money from individuals just because they are subject to frivolous, unrealistic, impossibly difficult recalls. Let's hope that happens. And again, I want to remind people to carry out a big statewide project like a citizen-initiated law or a recall, anything that involves collecting hundreds of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of signatures takes millions of dollars. So at Rescue Michigan, if we had to have the financial resources to wage an effective citizen-initiated law, well, number one, it would be better drafted than the ones that some other people are putting out. But again, they are still worth pursuing. So hopefully we will soon see an election integrity citizen-initiated law. Hopefully it will have fewer defects and shortcomings than the one for Unlock Part 2. But again, Unlock Part 2 is still worthwhile, still worth doing. It's still good policy, and it's still a great project. So we do hope you get involved in that. So thanks everybody for watching, and thanks again for all that you do for liberty. Till next time, peace.